let's talk about the election fraud. So, in any election, this is inevitably true. In any elections, there's going to be a certain degree of fraud and voter impropriety because there's no system that's perfect. Now the question is it enough to flip election results? And right now in Korea, there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of problems because there's a lot of ballot shortages, which is so ridiculous. But ballot shortages that hit multiple polling locations, over a dozen in Seoul's Songpa-gu district. And then so, right, that's where like a lot of the cool stuff, like if you ever been to Korea, you went to Lotte World, or you see the tallest tower in Seoul, Lotte Tower, that's where it is. So this is that district. It's a very nice district. If you watched my video on Instagram where I went to the lake with all the pretty cherry blossoms, that's also where it is. So yeah, ballot shortages, especially in this district in Korea, hit over a dozen polling locations in this district in Seoul, and amid a high turnout. So, in this election, 61 to 62% of Koreans voted in this election. This is the second highest turnout in local election history in Korea, which means that a lot of Koreans were concerned about the future of their country. But yeah, 61% in affected areas, and there's accusations that it affected not only places in Seoul, in Jamsil, in Songpa district, but all over the country, in Daegu, in Daejeon. Like I've seen lots and lots of footage and lots of reports of this coming out. But right now, even the National Election Committee itself in Korea, so this is not conspiracy theory, by the way, has officially confirmed that ballot shortages occurred at 14 polling locations during yesterday's local elections, right? So mainly Jamsil, Garak, and Munjeong areas, Cheongdam. And so, yeah. And a JTBC released exit poll results before polls had officially closed, which clearly violates election law. And so a lot of things, ballot shortages, people weren't able to vote. And I think this affected upwards of 2,800 voters. Like, so thousands upon thousands. And that's just in Seoul itself. Like thousands upon thousands of Koreans were not able to vote because of what? Ballot shortages. First of all, this is so insane that you have ballot shortages in a country like South Korea. Right here, Grok estimates 2,800 South Korean voters could not vote and went home. According to analysis by Grok, based on the latest Joseon Ilbo, by the way, all these are left-wing outlets, as many as 2,800 voters nationwide may have been unable to cast their ballots and eventually gave up and returned home due to severe ballot shortages during the June 3rd local elections. Songpa-gu printed ballots for only 50% of eligible voters, which is insane. Why would you only print ballots for 50% of eligible voters? You need to print ballots for 100% of eligible voters. So yes, not all of them are going to come out, but so that you have enough for every person to vote. But how do you not have enough? Like only printing 50% for eligible that word is so hard to say. Eligible voters is so insane. Like, and you have all of these areas that, 500 people are waiting, 200 people, 300, 400 people waiting for tickets, but they just gave up. They're like, okay, I don't know if it's going to come out anytime soon. Boom. And this is actual like election interference. Like this is fraud. Like this disenfranchises actual Korean voters. Right here in Jamsil, Childong, which is how you say it, I think. 300 to 400 voters who gave up. Jamsil Idong, 80 to 120 voters gave up. Songpa-gu, 8 stations. Upwards of 1,300 voters gave up. Other Seoul districts, 600. Nationwide, 2,800, right? And that's just like estimates, right? Based on what we know. So it's like thousands of Koreans aren't able to vote. Like this is a grand failure. This is a huge failure of the National Election Commission in Korea. Like how does Korea, which if you ever go to Korea, it is an incredible country. It runs so smoothly. The public transportation is always on time. It's clean. It's orderly. It's safe. Things are so efficient. All the systems are so intuitive and well set up. It is such a breeze getting around in Korea. I can go to Korea. I don't need a car. I can go to wherever I want in Korea. Like seriously, like genuinely wherever I want, except if it's like in the middle, like but nowhere, in what you call the boonies. then yeah, maybe you need a car or a taxi. But even then, you could like taxis are so easy to get. It's so easy to get around in Korea. So how do you get in a Korea with it prides itself on its efficiency, its productivity? Like how do you mess up the election, which is such a contentious election? How do you mess this up so much that you only print 50% of ballots for 50% of eligible voters? Like you have to assume that 100 people are coming out. We all know that 100 people never come out to vote. Even in America, it's like in the 60% as well. So like 30 to 40% of Americans and eligible voters don't vote. But yeah, that's what. How do you screw this up this badly? How do you screw this up this badly? And you might think, hey, Kangmin, it's only a few thousand votes. What are you going to do? There are 50, 60 million people in Korea. All right. Well, I'll show you what kind of result it'll have. Look at this. Right here. Here's an election, okay? 50 to 50%. The Democrat won here. Right here. Okay? For Chungnam. Okay, they won this election by 1 vote. He had 11,594 votes. The People Power Party candidate had 11,593 votes. Okay, it was literally determined by 1 vote. 1 vote. Can you imagine if just 2 of those people, 2 of the 2,800 people who weren't able to vote, voted in this election for the People Power Party? Then they would have won. And that literally dictates the next few years, if not the next few decades, of Korean politics and legislation. Like, literally. This is the governor's race, right? Yeah. It's this is how important our elections are. No, actually, I think this might be a local city council election. 노산시, 충남 논산, it's a city, 논산 in Chungnam-do, right? And that's a province, I think, in Korea. And small city, clearly you see with the amount of votes, but yeah. So disenfranchising voters could literally mean completely different election results, and so having disenfranchising voters like this, it's really, really bad. So this is a mass failure, and it's so ridiculous that the DPK, that Lee Jae-myung, is not getting more flack for this, because you already know if it was a conservative president in charge, people would be freaking out. Mass media would be freaking out about how we need to impeach the president for his negligence with the National Election Commission that disenfranchised voters. Oh, but because it was under Lee Jae-myung, while media is reporting it, they're not criticizing him for it, right? Even this person said this. Like, Koreans know this too, that this person in Korea said, I don't like Yoon Suk-yeol, but if it's been Yoon Suk-yeol doing this, you would all have rushed to Gwanghwamun right away chanting for impeachment. Yet because the Democratic Party is doing it, you keep your mouth shut, it's fine like that? Oh, the president did nothing wrong, blah, 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 blah. Are you kidding me? This is a problem where the president needs to step up and apologize. This is so true. And as far as we know, they haven't issued any like direct apologies. They said, "Oh, this is something that messed up in the NEC, blah blah blah." But they haven't issued a direct apology and taken responsibility for this. Now you know if it was the other way around, it's the same everywhere you go. The right is always accused of everything, but when the left does it, it's okay. Because why? It's because we're doing it. Which is why, again, this is a broader point. Conservatives cannot hold to the abstractions of principles over power. And what I mean by that is like we advocate and we fight for our principles, we fight for our convictions, we fight for our values, we fight for the policies that we want in the country. That's all true and that's all good. But what I'm saying is that you can't hold to these abstractions of principles. Like, oh, I'm so principled. Look at me. I'm a principled conservative and I abide by the rule of law. Oh, the left doesn't. It's like, okay, but the left is going to do whatever they want anyways. So that doesn't work. You have to attain power and you got to wield power in an effective and optical way so that you win the trust of the people. That's what you have to do. And it's obviously the hypocrisy is it's like so blatant in politics everywhere you go. The left, it's okay when the left does it, but it's not okay when the right does it. But yes, objectively true, the National Election Commission is not directly under the president. Like the president isn't directly responsible for every single thing that the National Election Commission does. But at the same time, as the leader of your country, it is incumbent on you to apologize, especially to those 2,800 voters and probably even more, thousands of voters who weren't able to vote because of this mishandling. So the election commission needs complete rehaul. They need complete reform because this is objectively insane that this happened in 2026. Now, because of this, there's mass protests. Mass protests have broken out for like days. So it's been like 2 days and they're still protesting on the streets of Seoul, even in Daegu. They're protesting all over the country because of this, and rightfully so. If you weren't able to vote and you were disenfranchised from voting, I'd be pretty pissed too. I'd be pretty pissed because it dictates the direction and the future of your country. But even like among the... And again, you can say that these people were violent and they're getting violent, but the craziest thing is that police were confiscating the taegukgi. So taegukgi is the national flag of Korea. It is the South Korean flag, which is a great design, by the way. But they were confiscating the taegukgi that they're waving. Like, look here. Like, literally, they're taking away their taegukgi. They're taking away their right to fly the national flag of Korea. What are you doing? What are you doing? By all means, yeah, arrest violent protesters. If they're actual terrorists, like, yeah, by all means, arrest them. Fine. Like, you should not be a disruption to the public, attack law enforcement. You shouldn't do that. But they're just waving the Korean flag. And in the same way that the police in America or the UK, they attack patriots for waving their national flag. Like, what are we doing here? And this is a broader problem because you might think, oh, they're just trying to crack down on vigilantism. They're just trying to crack down on lawlessness. No, like this is a problem because in Korea, it's a well-known fact that there's actually a lot of Chinese nationals and a lot of Southeast Asian people becoming part of the police force. They're becoming part of the police force. That the people who enforce the law, and are supposed to enforce the law in Korea, are foreign nationals. How does that make any sense? We have this incident here in Jeju-do, which is the island south of Korea. Right here. They're protesting. Oh my God. So as you saw there, if you're just listening, what happened was a bunch of Chinese nationals came up to peaceful protesters. Peaceful protesters, these are old Koreans, by the way, like Korean grandmas and grandpas. They're protesting on the streets about Chinese infiltration in Korea. And then these Chinese nationals, of course, yes, proving them right? You really proved them wrong, didn't you? But they actually proved them right by going up to them and acting like thugs. They're beating them up. They're taking their flags and throwing it on the ground, kicking down their signs. And you wonder why there's so many Koreans who don't want you in Korea. You act like this. And when we think about the Chinese infiltration in Korea, it's very severe. I would say it's even worse than it is in America, although it does happen in America, mainly through our academic institutions. But it's bad. It's bad. And in the same way the left cares about when we call out garbage behavior more than the garbage behavior itself, obviously the left in Korea also are calling out this, saying, why are you so racist against Chinese people? That's so mean. Instead of calling this behavior out, like they literally are attacking Koreans on the streets, protesting peacefully. So there is a foreign invasion happening on American soil. Definitely on American soil, but Korean soil as well. Where they're coming in, they're infiltrating the institutions, the companies, and disrupting public life. So when people say that, oh, you're just racist against Chinese people to Koreans, it's like, no, like Koreans don't just blindly hate mainland Chinese people. Like any average Korean you talk to, like they're very accepting, they're tolerant. To a fault, in my opinion. But it's always it's the response to the behavior. You gotta understand, these stereotypes exist because of the behavior. If Chinese nationals were known in Korea for being very quiet, very respectful, upholding decorum and etiquette in Korea, not going around speaking Chinese loudly, not causing a ruckus or acting like thugs on the street. Yeah, like Koreans wouldn't have a stereotype against them. But they do because, why? These stereotypes are just an indication of reality. What people observe is just pattern recognition. That's not racist. It's just recognizing that certain people have a pattern for certain behavior and that we don't want to tolerate that kind of behavior. We don't like that kind of behavior. And it's the same thing we talked about earlier in this program that black people do. Oh, you just hate us because we're black. No, we don't hate you because you're black. We hate you because you destroy our communities and kill our people. If you stop that behavior, if you're known for being polite, for being courteous, for just being so generous and charitable, no one would have a problem with you. Actually, people will welcome you with open arms and, man, I really wish I would encounter a black customer today. They're the best. But of course, no one feels that way because we all have fatigue. Why? Because we see the videos, we have the experiences, we have the encounters. So all the gaslighting doesn't work. It doesn't work. So here's video footage of one of the protests happening about the election fraud. All right, so you see, pause the video. So you see there on the right side, you see Trump. You see a guy wearing like a Trump costume and like he has a Trump mask on. And the guy in the middle, his name is Douglas. Douglas. What was his name again? Can you zoom out a bit? What was his name? Douglas Frank. Okay, so Douglas Frank, he's supposedly an election fraud expert in America. I've heard of him only today, but he came to South Korea to protest with the Korean people. Now, by all means, I think this is worthy of protest, and you should protest the Korean election, especially with this clear amount of election fraud. I think there's also examples that we have of Korean conservatives folding their ballots just to make sure that their ballot is counted. And then in all the footage and the pictures of the ballots being counted, like none of the folded ballots were there. So that it's really concerning because like they're trying to be like, okay, I'm going to take preventative measures personally to prevent voter fraud, yet where's my vote? Where are these ballots? And so a lot of conservatives are trying to do their part in Korea to prevent voter impropriety, yet it just seems to happen on a scale that is concerning. A scale that is concerning. So if we can go back to the video. So right here, this guy, Douglas, is I impugn no like bad motives to this guy. I think he's great. I think he's doing good work. But the problem is, I want to speak on this where this guy comes in and everyone sees him as a savior. Koreans see him as a savior. Koreans are going and saying, well, like America needs to intervene. And then Dr. Douglas here is also saying America needs to intervene. And you heard their shouts. Their shouts were saying, we go together, we go together, we go together. And this is a chant. This is like an anthem of a lot of Korean conservatives on the right in Korea. And when they say we go together, they're saying all democracies go together in the fight for democracy, right? They say America, they say Japan, they say Israel. All these countries, we all go together for the fight for democracy. But the problem is, like, democracy, and I might get a lot of flack for this, but democracy should not be the framework by which you judge someone to be your ally or not. You can have a country that is a constitutional monarchy, yet be someone who is strategically good to be aligned with, right? Just because they're a democracy doesn't mean that there are natural partners. Like we have to think a little deeper and a little bigger when it comes to politics. Democracy in and of itself is not the end goal of politics. What is the end goal of politics? It's upholding what is good, true, and beautiful. We want to uphold goodness and truth and beauty in society. We want order. We want things to thrive. We want, a flourishing society, a prosperous society. We want an orderly society. We want a clean and safe society. But we want a beautiful society, right? And so, insofar as democracy is a bottleneck and an obstacle towards those ends, it's like, okay, maybe we need to cut down on democracy a bit. And that might be controversial, but again, the founding fathers, we always look to America as a shining example of democracy. No, it wasn't a shining example of democracy. Direct citizens couldn't vote for the president until very recently. Yes, that's true. Why? Because it was the slate of electors who voted. The American citizens couldn't even vote for the Senate, the senator of their state. Federally, the only thing they voted for was what? The House of Representatives. And even then, voting was very, very limited. Why? Because the founding fathers of America, they did not create America and build America as a democracy. They built America as a republic where you have representatives represent you, and you have democratic norms, sure, but it was, and has always been, a constitutional republic. So mass democracy was never promised or envisioned among the founding fathers of America. Koreans need to understand this, and I hope Koreans understand this, where you can have democratic norms. I'm not saying that's bad. That's actually healthy for society in certain regards. But to have mass democracy and just to leave the future of the country to every single person is not a wise way of governance. We have warnings from many, many philosophers in the past about mass democracy. So if democracy is the standard by which we judge our allies, that's not helpful. I don't believe that's a helpful test. And so they say we go together. But not only do we go together, they constantly see America as a way for people, for Korea to be bailed out. You see this a lot on the right in Korea online. And I know there's a lot of people on the right who also call this out, but they say that, hopefully Trump comes in and kidnaps Lee Jae-myung like he did with Maduro. Like, no, he's not going to do that. He's not going to do that. Because Korea is not a communist hellhole and is not an enemy to America. They would never do that. They would never do that. And here's a video right here. This happened the other day. So a representative asked Marco Rubio, hey, what do you think about the anti-American interests of South Korea going after American companies? Don't you think we should intervene? And this is what Marco Rubio said. So let's watch this clip.
Democratic one, which is the one that you didn't touch on that I'm concerned about is actually a democratic one, which is the democracy of South Korea has taken a strong bent to the left, opening up more avenues toward China and, in fact, beginning to oppress many of our companies, including Meta, Coupon, and others. Can you tell us what can be done and what this committee should do with countries who, through democratic means, are beginning to become anti-U.S.?
Right. So there are a couple points I would make. The first is that, and this is the unique aspect of dealing with democracies, and we see it in our hemisphere quite often. Sometimes in a democratic country, they will elect leaders that are friendlier to U.S. national interests, such as what we have now in Japan. And sometimes they will elect leaders that have a different perspective. We respect the sovereign choice of the people of that country. That's a legitimate election. That's who they chose. In those instances in which a democracy and their elected leaders are taking positions that run contrary to the national interest of the United States, it doesn't mean we want to overthrow the government or get rid of the government because it's a democratic government. It simply means we have to engage them in the fact that they are doing things that are irritants to our national interests. You point to some of our companies. Our companies aren't just facing challenges and I would say targeting in South Korea, they're facing it throughout Europe. And the European Union, as an example, is targeting our technology companies and conducting what we believe is unfair. So I think this becomes a feature of our engagement with South Korea, even as we have things that we're strategically aligned on. These are areas we've expressed and I think have, frankly, impacted our ability to conclude a trade agreement with them because of some of their behavior towards American companies.
So Marco Rubio summed it up pretty well that they're not gonna intervene. Trump admin is not gonna go in and send the military to capture Lee Jae-myung like they did with Maduro and do a regime change. They're not gonna do that. Yet there are so many people who advocate for that on the internet from the right, and also there's also people who think that America's gonna save them, that America's gonna bail them out. One, that's just not gonna happen. And the more that you advocate for that, it literally deflects the responsibility from you to another person in another country. But secondly, it looks weak. It looks weak. Koreans need to stop doing this where they expect America to bail them out of everything that they have. But Koreans, by their own flesh and blood, by their own hands and feet, they have to fight for their country. And I don't mean like in a violent way. I'm not calling for a violent insurrection or things like that. I'm saying through the means that you have. Fight for your country. Fight for goodness, truth, and beauty, that it may prevail, that justice and mercy and goodness may prevail in your country. You need to fight for those things. You're a patriot. Don't expect America to bail you out every time. And it's easy to beat your chest about it on the internet, but like go out and do something about it. Talk to people about it. Mobilize. Right? Campaign. Like there's so many avenues by which you can save this country and save Korea and transform Korea. And the number one thing that you can do is that change is a slow process, unfortunately, in a democracy. But one thing you can do is get married and have lots of children. You want to impact change for the future of Korea? Well, there's no future. You can't impact change for the future of Korea if there's no future Korea, if there's no future Koreans. And so while liberals are going out being boss babes and saying, oh, look at how great I am, living their single lives, as a conservative, if you truly believe in American values, traditional values, then what you think you'll do is get married and have children, have lots of children. Get married and have lots of children. And I know it's not easy. It's easier in America than in Korea because of the money that we make in America. It's easier to make money in America than it is in Korea. The average salary in America is much higher than it is in Korea. I get that. But at the same time, Korea is richer than it's ever been before. 50 years ago, the Korean birth rate was 5. And that was when Korea was one of the poorest countries in the world. What's your excuse? What's my excuse? Well, I'm trying to find a wife. But yeah, go have children, get married, have children. That's one legitimate way that you can have lasting impact for the future of Korea and change this country for the better. Talking about how America will save us will not. That's just not a feasible political solution, but Koreans need to advocate with their voices, with their hands and feet for the future of Korea. So that's the election fraud. That's what's going on in Korea. I hope things get resolved. I don't have much hope because the DBK is not good news. And I don't think they'll solve the issue of election fraud anytime soon. And the mainstream media, while they report on the election impropriety, the voter impropriety, they still will call the right a bunch of conspiracy theorists and election denier people, right? That's what they did in America too. Oh, you're election deniers. When we had clear examples of election fraud in the 2020 election, it's just a matter of we need to find the evidence for it. We need to give substantial proof and have genuine investigations and to see if it was enough to overturn the results of the elections. And hope that once the PPP also gets back in power, that they're able to investigate. But that's why it's very important to get back in power. That political power is the most important in politics. Why? Because that's how you effectuate change. So if you want to free President Yoon, if you want to investigate voter fraud, if you want to change the National Election Committee, you have to gain political power. And then once you gain political power, that's when you can make the changes necessary.